So, we have one more thing of trigonometry that we need to learn. We just went over a video where we can solve for missing sides using trig, but what about this over here? What if we're solving for, we now have enough information to solve for missing angles also using trig. It's going to look a little bit different. But the basic ideas are going to be the same exact. So right here, we still need to, one, identify the captain angle. In this case, it's going to be the angle we're trying to solve for. Then we still need to label hypotenuse, opposite, and adjacent. So I see that this 27 is on the opposite side, so that's going to be my opposite. My hypotenuse is always across of my right angle, and I didn't give you anything about the hypotenuse, so we're not going to care about that one. And adjacent is always right next to the captain angle. So we've identified the captain, we've labeled the triangle, so now it is SOHCAHTOA time. This is still going to be trig because we're dealing with angles here. So we need to find the trig function that deals with opposite and adjacent. So we go over here, this doesn't have adjacent, this doesn't have opposite, this has both opposite and adjacent, and that T stands for the tangent button that you're going to use on your calculator. But in this case, we don't know what the captain angle is. So we're just going to put our variable x, and we're still going to follow the same fraction setup like we did when we solved for missing sides. Opposite on top of adjacent. Opposite over adjacent, 27 over 32. Now, we still need to solve for x, but x isn't over here in the fraction like it used to be. It's all tied up in the tangent in that trig function. So we need to figure out what is our new inverse operation to get rid of tangent. And in geometry, it's just going to be the tangent, and we're going to put a little -1 up there to show that it's the opposite of regular tangent. And that just represents another button on your calculator. So we're also going to take the tangent of -1 of both sides. Now, pause it. And just like with other inverse operations we deal with, the tangent to the -1 and the regular tangent cancel each other out. So we're just left with x is equal to the tangent of -1 of that big old fraction, 27 over 32. And at this point, we just have to go to the calculator and find the tangent to the -1. And we're just going to put in that fraction, 27 divided by 32, in your calculator. Hit enter, and we'll get that x is equal to 40.2 degrees. Because remember, we solved for the angle in here. We didn't solve for a missing side. We solved for a missing angle in this case. 40.2 degrees. So this is another problem where we have a missing angle here that we'll call x. And I gave you two sides in this right triangle. So this is going to be a trig problem since we're looking for an angle. Okay? So we need to identify the captain, label the sides, set up our trig ratio. Our captain is going to be the angle we want to solve for. The hypotenuse is always across them. It's almost like getting pointed at by that right angle. And it looks like that 18 is on the opposite side of our missing angle, so it'll become an opposite side. And we don't really care about that adjacent side. There's nothing there. So we're just going to use the O and the H. So we've identified the captain, we've labeled the triangle, so now it's SOHCAHTOA time, okay? And we need to figure out which are we going to use sine, cosine, or tangent when we have the opposite and hypotenuse side. Looks like right here, the first one, our first stop, has the opposite and hypotenuse. So the S stands for the sine button that you'll use on your calculator. We don't know what the captain angle is yet. And the fraction needs to be opposite over hypotenuse. Opposite over hypotenuse. Now just like last time, we see that x isn't in the fraction like it was when it was a missing side. The x is all up with the sine. So we need to ask, what's the inverse operation going to be to get rid of sine? And just like over here, all we did is we took the trig function, we put a little -1 on top. So we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to do the sine to the -1 on both sides. Regular sine and sine to the -1 will cancel each other out because they're inverse operations. And we're left with x is equal to the sine of -1 And we still have that original fraction we set up. Now this is just a calculator problem. We're going to find sine of -1 on our calculator, which we're always going to use the sine to the -1 or tangent to the -1 when we're solving for missing angles. That's when we use this inverse trig. We'll put in the 18 divided by 19, and we're left with x is equal to 71.3 degrees. Because remember, we just solved for a missing angle, not a missing side this time.